1.2 million sea creatures crushed for just 1 pound of dye. Tyrian purple was that precious. Imagine the sheer toil, the difficulty for just 1 gram of this amazing color. This was not just any dye, it was history's most expensive pigment. Its origins trace back thousands of years. Phoenician artisans discovered it. They lived in the ancient city of Tyre. This happened around 1600 BC, roughly 3,600 years ago. The entire process was painstaking. It started with harvesting murex snails, specifically Bolinus brandaris and Hexaplex trunculus species. These snails lived in the Mediterranean Sea. Divers gathered them by hand, and it was a very dirty job. The snails were crushed. Their tiny hypobranchial glands removed. These glands produced a clear fluid. This fluid, when exposed to air and sunlight, changed color. It went from pale yellow to green, then blue, and finally a deep, vibrant purple. The exact hue varied. It could be a reddish purple or a more bluish violet, depending on the specific snail species and processing methods. The smell during this whole process was absolutely horrendous. Pliny the Elder documented it. He described the stench as insufferable. Imagine factories smelling like rotting fish for miles around. One tiny drop of dye came from each snail, so you needed an enormous quantity of creatures. Think of 10,000 snails for just 1 gram of pigment. That 1 gram was not much. It was barely enough to tint a small piece of cloth. In ancient Rome, this color was a massive status symbol. It was reserved for emperors and senators. Only the most powerful people could wear it. A Roman emperor might wear an entire purple toga. This was a strong visual statement. Senators had a broad purple stripe. This stripe was known as the clavis. It was about 3 inches wide. Knights were allowed a narrow stripe. This showed their place in society. The dye was worth more than its weight in gold. A single pound of Tyrian purple wool could cost 200 Roman denarii. This was in the 1st century AD. That was roughly the annual income of a skilled craftsman, or a soldier's annual wage. To dye a plain white tunic entirely purple could cost 1,500 sesterces. That sum was like buying a small house today. Its value was extreme. The color itself never faded. It was incredibly light-fast. Sunlight intensified its richness. It did not bleach out. This made the dye even more desirable. This permanence was a key factor in its high cost and its lasting appeal. It was a color for the ages. Its production sustained the economy of Tyre. For over 2,000 years, it was a trade secret closely guarded. Only a few knew the full method. The Byzantine Empire continued its use, especially for imperial robes and documents. But when Constantinople fell in 1453 AD, a turning point, the Ottomans took control. The knowledge of Tyrian purple production slowly disappeared. It became a lost art. The world lost its most magnificent color. For hundreds of years, it was just a legend. Chemists in the 19th century started to analyze ancient texts. They worked to rediscover the lost formula. One key compound was identified. It was 6,6-dibromo indigo. This was the exact molecule responsible for the purple hue. A German chemist named Paul Friedlander rediscovered its chemical structure. This was in 1909. He actually needed 12,000 murex snails himself just to obtain 1.4 grams of pure dye. This confirmed the historical accounts of its rarity. And its insane expense. His experiment verified the ancient struggle and the tremendous resource investment, but the process was still complex and expensive. It remained a difficult dye to produce, even with modern chemistry. Today, it is mostly an academic curiosity, or a specialty item for small batches. The ecological impact of harvesting millions of snails makes large-scale production impractical, and rightly so. We have synthetic versions now. These are much cheaper, and they do not involve harming sea creatures, but those do not have the same historical weight. They lack the story. The original Tyrian purple held immense power. It was a symbol of authority, a mark of divine right. It was a color that truly set people apart. From emperors to high priests, it represented wealth beyond imagining. The sheer logistics of its creation are mind-boggling. Collecting countless tiny creatures, processing them in a foul-smelling environment, transforming their clear secretions into a glorious hue, it was an industry built on pain and prestige. This color defined ancient luxury. It was a color that screamed power, and it was a color that came with a price measured in sweat and time and hundreds of thousands of lives of tiny snails. It was worth every difficult step to those who wore it. And who commissioned it? The dye was used for more than just clothing. It graced imperial scrolls and important manuscripts, providing visual emphasis to royal decrees. It was a color of distinction, a truly regal shade. The enduring legacy of Tyrian purple shows us how deeply color can be tied to human culture. And status, it was not just a visual choice, it was a political one, a social one, a statement of absolute dominance. It showed who ruled and who obeyed. The scale of the ancient industry was truly vast. Archaeologists have found massive shell middens. These are piles of discarded snail shells. They stand many meters high. These sites show evidence of millions upon millions of snails, processed over centuries, each shell a testament to the purple trade. One site alone held enough shells to represent hundreds of thousands of snails. This gives us a glimpse into the sheer magnitude of their operation. The color changed slightly depending on the snail species. The Bolinus brandaris gave a more reddish purple. The Hexaplex trunculus gave a more violet or bluish shade. These variations were also highly prized. The different nuances offered different options for luxury. It was not a one-size-fits-all color, it was a tailored luxury. For the absolute elite, this was a secret known only to a few. The methods passed down through families from one generation to the next. It was not something you learned easily. It was a craft demanding specialized knowledge. And great patience and a tolerance for that awful smell. The Romans even had sumptuary laws. These laws dictated who could wear what colors and how much of them. Tyrian purple was often strictly controlled by these laws. It was a way to maintain social order and visibly reinforce the hierarchy. You knew who was important just by their clothes. This was a powerful visual code, one understood by everyone, from the poorest slave to the wealthiest senator. It signified power and authority, a universal symbol of the ruling class. It truly was a king among colors. Its story tells us so much about ancient economies and ancient power structures and the lengths people would go to for something rare and beautiful and ultimately just a color. But what a color it was. It still captures our imagination today. Its rarity makes it legendary, and that insane price tag makes us wonder what we would pay for such a thing now.